Welcome to Kilroy's Outlaws and Legends Behind the Music with your host, multi-award-winning music producer, Eddie Kilroy. And now, here's your host, Eddie Kilroy.
Hi, and welcome to another edition of Kilroy's Outlaws, Legends, and Behind the Music. Mostly Behind the Music. We're going to talk about, Liz, let's talk about our old friends today.
Okay.
Let's talk about things that happened like with Waylon.
All right.
And
let's
the Highwaymen.
Talk about Waylon.
Well, a story that includes the Highwaymen. I was announcing a PRCA rodeo in Kissimmee, Florida. And I had a couple of friends down there.
That's close to my hometown.
It sure is. I'll tell you what, a pretty good rodeo, big rodeo.
I've been there a lot.
Yep. I've been there once. It was hot. Don't want to go back. No, I've been there a lot of times, both as a contestant and as an announcer. The last time was as announcer. So anyway, I'm at the rodeo. I run onto these two cowboy friends of mine. Their father, Jim Custer, and their mother, Dixie, were dear friends. And I watched those as young guys, Jim Bob Custer and Cody Custer. Cody won the world riding bulls in 1992, and that was a thrill for all of us. Anyhow, the Highwaymen were working in Orlando doing a Frito-Lay convention.
Frito-Lay convention, the potato chip Frito-Lay?
Yeah, they brought all of their people in from all over the world and to have this big convention in Orlando, and they hired the Highwaymen. And to tell you what, there's a lot of money in potato chips and Fritos and all that stuff.
Well, you ought to know you eat enough of them every
night. Well, yes,
night.
I do, but you know what? It had to cost millions of dollars to bring all these people in from all over the world that worked for Frito-Lay, then pay $200,000 for the Highwaymen to entertain them. So anyway, they're working over there.
$200,000, huh?
$200,000. That's
Wow.
what the Highwaymen were getting per show. Anyhow, I asked Cody and Jim Bob, and I think Wacy Cathy, another bull rider, was with him. I think I'm right on that. And I said, you guys want to go see the Highwaymen tonight? Oh, yeah, I would like to do that. So I called Waylon, and I said, I'm bringing some guys over, set it up for us to see the Highwaymen. Let's go backstage and what have you. And, of course, Waylon did. And we trot over there and to Orlando. And Waylon and them are on, like, the 6th floor. And I called his room and didn't get an answer. So I trip up 6 floors of stairs, knock on the door. He'd been in the shower. He answered the door. Everybody comes out. They're kind of staying on the same floor. I didn't like elevators. I was a little bit claustrophobic in some of them. I envisioned an elevator stopping between floors, and that alarm bell, if I pushed it, it wouldn't work, knowing my luck. So I'm captured in an elevator. Anyway, Waylon said, you guys go on the elevator. Kilroy doesn't like elevators. I'm going to walk down the stairs with him, and he did.
That was nice of him.
Oh, Waylon was a great guy and a great friend, and I miss him every day. He's still in my phone. He asked me one time, these people, this guy's passed, and this guy's gone, and this one's gone. Why do you keep them in your phone? And to keep them, I'll never forget them, but to make sure they're in my phone, so when I'm flipping through contacts and I see Waylon's name, I remember Waylon and Ray Price and all those people in my phone. I'll never take them out of the phone. But getting back to the story, we get backstage. Johnny Cash, Chris, Waylon, and Willie. And they really were all about these bull riders. But there were no chairs back behind the stage, like usually there is. And they were apologizing, sorry guys, there's no chairs and what have you. And Johnny Cash, man, he was all over these bull riders. I had no idea that Johnny Cash would be, into bull riders, but he was just soaking up everything they said. And then the show starts, and Jim Bob Custer is missing. And I said, where's Jim Bob? And Cody said, I don't know. Wacy said, I don't know. I said, Wacy, I'm pretty darn sure Wacy Cathy was the third guy with us. And so we start looking around, and he was on stage. Jim Bob Custer had found a chair on stage, and he's sitting out there with the Highwaymen, and he's just sitting there right in the middle of them. They're just doing a show. But that's Jim Bob.
Where was he on stage?
Right out
with
the band. I mean, he's right out in the middle of the Highwaymen, sitting there saying, this is a cool place to watch a show. Jim Bob was something else. Cody also. And I treasure their friendship. I miss their dad. Their mom, Dixie, is a grand lady. And those two guys were, like I said, they were bred to be cowboys, and they turned out to be great cowboys. But we had a good time. Waylon was always so gracious, and of course he was a good friend. Speaking of Waylon, we look forward to Sundays, because when Waylon wasn't on the road, we'd all gather over at his house, and I think Connie would come over and fix a big breakfast. We would fellowship and have a wonderful breakfast, and Waylon was a gracious host and always fun. One time, I bought a 1996 Ford 350 dually. And I had not a camper, but a cover on it to carry sound equipment. And I went over to Waylon's in it, and it was red. It was so red it smelled red. And
was the camper red too?
No, it wasn't a camper. It was just a shell.
Or the topper?
Yeah, just a topper on there. And I was going to play a cassette for Waylon, but his cassette player in the house was on the blink. So I said, well, let's go outside and play it in my truck. And he said, damn, Kilroy, why didn't you get a big red truck? Of course, it was just a dually.
But it was a long bed, crew cab,
long bed, and
with a topper.
It looked really big, but it really wasn't. But he said, why didn't you get a big red truck? But Waylon was such a good pal, and we had such a good time. And I think that Cody, Jim Bob, and the other, which I think is Wacy Kathy, I think they had a grand time, especially Jim Bob sitting. You can't get a better seat to see the Highwaymen than be right there in, sitting on stage with them singing in your ear. So anyhow, that was a story I shared on, because the two things that I've always gravitated coming out of the cowboy world, I just love cowboys and love music. So it was one of those things that was a good night for all of us. The breakfast at Waylon's was really, really good, and he was a good friend, and I miss him like so many, like Ray Price and all of them.
Did you not tell me one time you bought a house of his?
Yeah, I bought a house from Waylon. That was a good story. It was a nice home, not too far from the airport in Nashville, the old airport. And I was in there kind of fixing it up and doing some things. And in Tennessee, they built kind of into hills and stuff, and so the second floor went out to a patio, elevated patio, and I noticed that there were two kids out there, about a girl and a boy, probably 10, 12 years old, and I said, hey, how y'all doing? And I had some Cokes iced down, and I said, hey, come on in, you want a Coke? Oh, no, sir, we just wanted to welcome you to the neighborhood. And I said, well, thank you very much. They said, you're really fixing the place up, the yard looks nice and everything. The last guy that lived here, it was a mess. He had a bunch of old cars, and the yard. Are you
talking Waylon?
Yeah, I'm getting to that.
Oh, okay.
And it was the lawn was not mowed, and it was just pretty awful. I said, who was it? I knew who it was. He was somebody in the music business. I said, oh, really? And they said, yeah. After they saying how bad it was, they said, what kind of business you're in? I said, I sell life insurance. I didn't want them to think, oh, my God, another music guy's moving in and ruining the neighborhood.
Well,
no.
Okay.
We had good times.
You told me a story about building a fence.
Oh,
after you
yeah,
moved in.
yeah. I wanted a big fence because it was only on 2 acres, and so there were neighbors. And so I ordered all the lumber from the lumber yard, and one of my artists, Chuck Price, a big old boy that liked to work, and he was helping me build this fence, and it was 10 feet high. And so this older lady from back behind came over and said, why are you building this big old tall fence here? What are you going to put in it? I said, it's got to be tall because I'm bringing in a couple of elephants. And she said, elephants? I don't think they're allowed in Nashville. I said, oh, well, they're little elephants, but they're going to grow up.
Did you really tell her that?
Yes, I did. What I'm going to say, I don't want to see your house, lady. I was trying to think of a reason that
why don't you put your earpiece back in your ear?
Which one?
That one.
That one? Oh,
yep.
Shoot. That's why I never wore earrings. I have, it'll come to a surprise to a lot of people I know, but I have absolutely no piercings.
Do you not?
No piercings. Well, you know that.
Wait a minute. I think you do.
Where?
Isn't there a hole in your belly button?
That's a piercing. No.
Or did somebody shoot you there?
Lord, I want
one
to
or the two.
Hey, let's talk about George. George Jones, the possum, yeah.
I did get to meet him.
I was
really
we went
privileged.
Up when that was
a couple of times, actually.
Yep, actually, and that was our kind of stop-off point. It was halfway. That's when we were living in Virginia, and we were with XM Satellite Radio.
Yep.
And we'd have to make some trips to Texas, and that was our stopping point because Franklin, Tennessee was almost exactly halfway between Washington, D.C., Virginia, whatever, and Houston. So we'd stop. Remember, we pulled up there and hit the little speaker deal at George's Gate, and the Spanish-speaking lady with a Spanish accent answered and said, "Hello," however she did it. And I said,
"You can do better than that."
¿Qué pasó?
Yeah,
that's a little
that's
better.
About what you did. I was there.
Tacos?
No, you can do a pretty decent job.
Actually, I said, I want to see George Jones. And she said, "Oh, Mr. Jones isn't here." And I said, "Nancy, this is Kilroy." She said, "Kilroy?" She put on that accent for fans that were trying to get in. And she said, "I'll tell George he's out mowing the lawn." Well, here he comes down the driveway in a golf cart. Took us up to the house, and he had quite a museum for you to see there.
We had a couple of horses on the trailer.
Yeah, we had some horses with us.
But it wasn't hot, so
they were fine. And just hanging out with George and Nancy was it's always a treat because both of them were such great guys. Another George story. This is a before Nancy story. Before he married Nancy, Nancy was a huge factor, or the factor, in getting George back on the main track.
Yeah,
well,
she was.
Many years ago, I was working for Mercury Records, and 16th Avenue was a two-way street then. It wasn't one-way. And the houses were not far off of the street, like maybe 20 or 30 feet. So I walk in, and George, he had been drinking, obviously.
No.
At that time.
No.
And
he didn't drink, did he?
Only when it was available. And he made it available.
Only when he was awake.
Yeah, but he was a lot of fun. But this is a funny story because George and I were raised in southeast Texas about maybe 40 miles from each other. So I'd known George for many, many years. And he's leaning over the counter talking to the receptionist. And I said, "Hey, George, what's going on?" And he said, "Nothing unless you want to start something." You know, he was kind of belligerent when he drank. And George wasn't really big enough to be too belligerent, but he was a little bit belligerent. And I said, "Oh, go on with your bad self, George." And he had a half bottle of vodka in his hand. So he walks out the door, and I hear these brakes, screech, boom. He walked out in front of a cab, and a cab hit him, knocked him to the ground. He got up, he didn't spill a drop of that vodka, and he just walked off, like nothing happened another day.
But the cab actually hit him?
Yeah, it screeched and bumped him just enough to knock him down.
Well, it's a good thing it's not today's world, huh?
No, that's for sure. They just waved, drive on.
Yeah.
But nobody even helped him up, and he didn't spill his vodka, and he walked on. But he's another story on George, and I was not involved in this, but I have it from a credible source that was touring with George and Faron Young. And he had a pair of Levi's that looked like, I don't know, a bunch of billy goats had chewed them up or something. They were just ripped to shreds. And they had come out of a fight between George and Faron Young. And both of those guys liked to fight. They were about the same.
But they were little, both of them.
Yeah, they were
little.
about the same size, and they couldn't hurt each other, but they would just kind of wallow around on the ground. But I don't know who the Levi's belonged to, whether it was George or whether it was Faron, but they were just ripped to shreds. But there's so many stories.
Wait a minute, how'd they get all ripped up?
One of them was strong enough or had some scissors.
Or a knife.
Or a knife. No, I don't think they pull a knife on each other. Well, yeah.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, they might. But the next day they'd be having another drink together.
Yep.
And then another
would.
one. Mm-hmm. Faron drank enough too. And Faron had his bus on the interstate at a service station, and he had quit touring. And I called him one day, because I was thinking about buying the bus and converting the interior to a motorhome.
He had it at a service station for sale?
For sale, yeah.
Okay.
The bus. And
well, I knew not the service station, the bus.
I said, "Faron, has there ever been any whiskey drank on that bus?" And he said, "Not since it's been parked at that damn filling station." Faron was a mentor of mine. and a great friend. I've talked about that before, and it's another guy I miss.
I think the Faron story I like. Of course, you can't mention names. I know that, but who was? I mean, about somebody was going to be a star. What did he tell him?
Oh yeah, this guy from Houston, and I won't mention his name. He was one of those wanting to be an artist and wanting to be a star, but he really wasn't, and probably the chances of being so were nil because I haven't heard of him again. But he would get a guest shot on the Grand Ole Opry, and his mother was a talented seamstress, and she would make his clothes, and he would come out with the rhinestones and the fancy clothes like Porter and all those guys were wearing at the time, and he was kind of arrogant, and he was kind of like, I'm going to be a star, da-da-da. And Faron walked up to him and said, boy, the only way you're going to be a star is to get a damn Texaco station.
That's not exactly what he said, but close enough. We can't say what he said.
Faron was quite a guy and a very funny guy, and we enjoyed, as long as he lived, a close relationship, and he was a dear friend. But I'll tell you, I got a fight story for you.
Okay.
A guy that was the first. When I moved to Tennessee from Texas, there were only 2 cowboys in the state. And, well, Nashville for sure. And one was Kid Marley, and Kiddo was a real cowboy off the Miller Ranch out in Fluvanna, Texas. And a recording artist by the name of Johnny C., S-C-A-Y, who had sold 1 million records on a narration record called Day for Decision. He had some country hits too, and then he quit the music business. But he was, again, not a big guy, but a good friend, and he was a cowboy. And there was a beer joint by the name of the Tally-Ho. Chris Christopherson worked there for a while. How many people have had Chris pour him a beer? Chris was tending bar there while he was showing people his songs, and when he wasn't emptying ashtrays at Columbia Studios. And so we were over at the Tally-Ho one night, and Kid Marley was there. Kid went home. No, I went home. I'm trying to recall. This is like 40 years ago.
More than that.
Yeah, and Kiddo went to sleep in the truck, and the place closed. So Johnny C. took a 6-pack. There were old houses, as I've mentioned before. Anybody knows when 16th Avenue, that was in an old residential area, and there was this old ramshackle house, and a motorcycle gang lived there. So the moral of the story is, the Tally-Ho, the beer joint, closed. Johnny took a 6-pack and went over to visit the motorcycle gang. Well, the next day I saw him, and his jaw looked like a softball. I mean, he took a lick. And I said, what happened to you, son? He said, well, Kiddo was asleep in the truck and you'd gone home. So I took a 6-pack and I was going over and sitting on the porch with that motorcycle gang. And he said, he's sitting on the porch with the motorcycle gang. Again, my memory's bringing it back. He said, I don't know why I did it, but I just took a can of beer and I hit one of those guys upside the head with it. And man, he knocked me out in the street. And I said, well, what did you do? He said, hell, I got up and asked him if that was any way to treat his company.
That sounds like Johnny.
That was
My
Johnny.
favorite song of Johnny's was, help me out here, which one was it? The woman's dying.
Willie's drunk and Nellie's dying.
And Nellie's dying.
Hey, you guys look that up. You'll really enjoy it. It's a true story. It was a hit record, too.
Yes. Willie's drunk and Nellie's dying.
Nellie's dying.
Willie is the...
Well, it was a moonshiner.
And Nellie is the wife.
Yes.
And they had a bunch of kids.
Yep, and she had cancer, and they lived on Caney Fork Creek Road in Williamson County. And John knew them because he lived not too far from them. And he wrote this song, Willie's drunk and Nellie's dying. And
you recorded that?
Yes, I produced that on him. And Life magazine found out that it was a true story. Mm-hmm. And they did like a 5-page deal on it and flew into Nashville taking pictures and so forth and so on. But the end of the song, if you look it up, Willie's Drunk and Nellie's Dying by Johnny C., S-C-A-Y, and listen to the lyrics. It's a true story, true words, every word is exactly how it was. Well, at the end of the song, John said, if $1 or $2 you'd like to send to a good man in need, send to Willie York, Big East Park, Franklin, Tennessee. And that was it. Well, the record played all over the United States. So Willie's getting this money in, like $1 here, $2 there, whatever it was. I never did find out how much he got, but he was getting money in the mail just off his address.
Mm-hmm.
And
that's all they had to do. They didn't have to put an address.
Just
Willie York,
Big East Park, Franklin, Tennessee. Yeah,
that's pretty awesome.
And Nellie would try to beat him to the mailbox because
she knew what he'd do with it.
Yeah, he'd go buy whiskey.
Yeah.
But John had a lot of fun with that. We had a lot of fun making the record. And Life magazine, oh my God, when they called and this disc jockey called and called me and said, "There's a guy trying to get in touch with you from Life magazine, wants to do a story on Willie's drunk and Nellie's dying." I said, "Oh, come on." Art Chancey was his name. I said, "Come on, Art, somebody pulling your leg. Life magazine wants to do a story on our record." And he called again, said, "The guy called again." Third time, I called the guy. It ended up being David Snell, senior editor of Life magazine. He said, "I want to do a story on this record." I said, "Wow, okay, Life magazine." So we did, and the Life magazine crew came into Nashville, and we went out to Willie and Nellie's house. They took a lot of pictures, and we never thought about being in Life magazine, but we were.
And I have those pictures somewhere.
Somewhere there's those pictures.
Somewhere.
Well, it was the 4 decades in Nashville built up a memory bank for me that is unsurpassed for anything I've ever experienced. You don't stay there that many years and be that deep into the music industry without making really good friends. And what I want to tell people right now, yes, there are many country stars. There are stars in other genres also. But when they're off stage, they're just like everybody else. They just do something different for a living.
That's true.
Some guy may be a mechanic, some guy may be a truck driver, some guy may be a lawyer or a doctor. That's what they do for a living. And that's what the music people do for a living. But they basically are just regular guys and gals that do something else. And I loved my friendship. I loved the time in Nashville. I loved the memories.
Wait, I want to know, somewhere around here on a piece of wood, it says, tell me what it says. My memory is not working for me right now. They called you, what did they call you in Nashville? Outlaw? No. What did they call you?
Electric Cowboy.
No. I have it.
You have it? Then tell me, what did they call me that we can say on the radio?
Oh, well, that's the problem there, is what we can say on the radio. You were bad boy. Nashville's bad boy.
Nashville's
Gosh,
bad
come
boy.
on. You were no help at all.
You know
Nashville's bad boy.
Yeah, they did a big
Why did they call? And that was a huge thing.
Article.
Yep.
Nashville bad boy, Eddie Kilroy.
Yep. Why did they call you that?
Because I was not part of the establishment.
So what did you do that's so different?
Well, most producers and a lot of people that were running labels, which I did both, they would take kickbacks from publishing companies to record a song, or maybe they would want to put themselves on the song as a writer. I never did that, and I kind of bucked the system up there. And I became, when the outlaw movement came out with Waylon, Willie, and that bunch, I guess I was the outlaw producer that never did really fit in with the establishment. So that was okay with me, because they were all pretty much caught up in themselves instead of the music. Generally, some of them, they were really good guys. I have friends up there that are gone now that were great record producers. One was a guy by the name of Billy Sherrill, and I always held Billy in high esteem because he made good records, he made hit records, but I shouldn't say this, but a lot of times Billy was in the habit of putting his name on a song. Perhaps he didn't write it all. So I didn't appreciate that. But as far as his talent as a record producer, it was unsurpassed. I had Harold Shedd on our podcast a month or two ago.
A couple of months ago.
There's a guy that was straight as a string, honest as could be, and a wonderful individual that, if anyone listened to the podcast with Harold Shedd, I ask you to go look for the podcast we did with Harold Shedd, because you'll find it fascinating what the man did in Nashville, the artists he helped, the artists he signed to the label he was running, He was one of the guys that stands out to me as being a straight-up guy. Harold is still living, and he went back to
he's 91 now.
He retired to his hometown of Bremen, Georgia. Yeah, Georgia. And we talk regularly, and he's doing fantastic. Hey, we're going to wrap this up, okay? But first, I want to ask you to like and subscribe and share this with your friends, please, because we love talking about country music and the things that we experienced in 4 decades in Nashville. And I want to say adios.
Wait a minute.
Yes.
What about your email?
The email, yes.
The email will be on the screen, but please email us.
Yeah.
What would your email be?
My email would be Kilroy, Outlaws and Legends, polka dot, at yahoo.com.
No, it's Kilroy, no S, Outlaws and Legends, at yahoo.com.
I was close.
You were close.
I was just stumbling into it. Anyway, we'll see you guys. Thanks for liking. Thanks for subscribing. Thanks for being with us. God bless each and every one of you from the camp of Kilroys.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Kilroy's Outlaws and Legends Behind the Music. If you have any thoughts or questions about the content, email them. Kilroy Outlaws and Legends, all one word, at yahoo.com. That's Kilroy, no S, Outlaws and Legends, all one word, at yahoo.com. And don't forget to subscribe. Third-party use of any part of this podcast without the expressed consent of Eddie Kilroy is prohibited. The Kilroy's Outlaws and Legends Behind the Music podcast is a production of Eddie Kilroy.